Hello again and welcome to another edition of Shed Talk, my weekly magazine video series looking at the keeping, breeding and showing of cage birds, with a particular focus as usual on the exhibition style budgerigar. Well, I'd like to start by saying a massive thank you to all of the people who watch these videos. I couldn't believe it. So after I released the last video, I had a quick check on how it was doing, and within the first, I think it was the first sort of, certainly the first 2 days, if not the first day, it had reached the highest number of views I've ever had on a video in its first week. So it had done that in the first sort of 24, 36, 48 hours, which is absolutely amazing. I don't know why suddenly so many people decided they wanted to watch that video, but a big thank you for doing so. It obviously went down quite well with everybody. So like I say, massive thank you for that. While I'm on the subject of viewers, every week I get every week I get a little message from YouTube, and it poses a question to me. About 2 weeks ago, it asked me what the which country was the second in terms of the number of people who watched the videos. So obviously the UK came top, and I think some of that is just the way YouTube, presents videos to a local audience first. So the UK was top anyway. But it asked me what came second, and I was actually quite surprised with which country had the second most number of views or viewers who watch my videos every week. So I pose that question to you, just as a bit of fun. Which was the second most, or which country had the second most number of viewers for this for Shed Talk? I pose that to you. Have a think about it. Let me know your answers in the comment, and I will give you the answer at the end of this video. So if you're going to comment, make sure you do it before the end. Right. So anyway, so that's the question. And like, do post your answer in the video which one you would have thought it was, without cheating and skipping to the end of the video. Well, in this episode we're going to talk about, as I promised in the previous one, we're going to talk about how I pair up, and I'm going to talk mainly in this episode about those initial pairing up process. So mainly on paper, how I pair up on paper, and then how I finalised that decision. Right, so as I say, how do I pair up on paper? What I will need to do is nip over to the computer, because most of what I do is actually sat at a desk rather than here in the bird room. So I'll meet you across there and we'll talk about how I pair up on paper. So here I am at my computer, and there are two main documents that I'm going to use in order to do the paper pairing up, and this is the first one. Now some of you will have seen this before. So this is the spreadsheet that I use in order to score the birds, and I mentioned that I weight it by age. You can see that there, and it's currently set up in the way that I use it in order to see which birds I'm going to keep, and which birds I'm going to get rid of. Most of the columns are fairly self-explanatory. However, this isn't how I want it in order for my pairing up, because it takes account of the age, which is great for when I want to keep birds and keep the shed relatively young. But in terms of me pairing up, looking to pair up, I tend to pair my best birds to my best birds. So I want the highest scoring birds at the top, and the lowest scoring birds at the bottom based on their overall score. So this score here, you can see this sort of, I highlight the row there, that score there is the one that I want to have the highest at the top and the lowest at the bottom. And as you can see, it's currently out of order. It's currently been set to the age weighted area that you can see there. So I need to adjust it so that it's in the right order. I've already done this for the hens. You can see it here. You can see that in this case, we've got the hens. This row here is now the row that's been, it's all that the birds have been ordered by. So with the highest score at the top and the lowest at the bottom. So in it, I mean, for those of you that aren't familiar with spreadsheets, it's fairly simple how I would do it. I just select the birds. The birds below the ones I've selected don't really matter because I haven't scored them. They're no longer birds that are in my shed. And then I'm just going to quickly do this. And I want to sort by column K, high to low. And then I want to sort by column M, high to low. Okay, we've now got them in the right order. So this is the first one that I will use. And obviously, if I'm pairing best to best, I will look at the top bird there and the top bird here and look at suitability. But in order to confirm suitability, I need this other program that I'm running here, which is my database. So it's I mentioned that I use an online database in order for my breeding records, and I've got, this is Zoo Easy. I'm happy to talk about this in more detail if anybody really wants me to, but I can do the total birds at the top, and then I can also do my breeding pairs here, and it's the breeding pairs that I want. So these are previous breeding pairs that are down here. So let's have a quick look then at the way I will use this matrix. We'll go to the cockbirds first. I normally go by the cockbird, and I will take the first cockbird and then try and find it a suitable hen. Hopefully that makes sense to you. So as you can see, it's the cock. So I've got the cockbird up on the screen. Now, just to note, so I've made a little 25 here in brackets on this one and this one. This is just to remind me that these are 2025 rung birds put on an old ring. You might remember in a previous episode I spoke about that. So that's why there's a 25 there. Now, one of the things I will need to consider when I'm pairing up, of course, is the age of the birds. I don't, in terms of cockbirds, I won't pair a cockbird up if it's under 10 months. So it needs to be at least 10 months old from my point of view before I will pair it up. And with the hens, it would need to be at least 12 months old or approaching the 1 year old at the very minimum before I'd consider pairing it up. Now, I know some people will pair up younger than that, and quite clearly you will have your own views on that, and please feel free to comment in the comment section as to what sort of age you would pair up on. But from my point of view, it is 10 months and for the cockbirds and a year for the hens. Now I know from that this bird here being a late bred 2025, because I'd run out of rings at this stage, that this is going to be under 10 months old. But I can confirm that just by going into my breeding records, go into the birds. Let me just double check the ring number, 1927. I need to find 1927. It's there, look, this bird here. I click on it and it tells me that it's only 2 months old. So I know that I'm not going to be using that one for at least another 8 months, so probably into next year before that would come up. Right, so let's go back to my bird assessment form. So the next one is this 2502. Now that was bred, an early bred 2025 rung bird, so it was bred at the end of last year. So we'll try that one again. So again, I'll just list the birds. It's going to be towards the end, I think. And 2025-02 is here. Just so you know, the not known here, for those of you that have spotted it, is just that I haven't put the colour in yet, and but I will do that. I will add it to the records. So you can see this bird is 10 months old, so I'm happy that I will be able to pair this one up. By the time it gets into the breeding cage, it's going to be, you know, well over 10 months and closer to probably closer to 11 months. So I'm happy to pair this one up. You might, this bird here, by the way, is the grey-green that we bred this year, that came out, and it came out top of my scoring system. So as you can see, it's so that will be the bird that we'll be looking at. So I know that's a bird, one of the birds that I want to pair up. Now I need to find him a hen. Now ideally, I mentioned it before, ideally I would pair best to best. So I've got this bird, these are already in this order here. So my best hen, based on my matrix scoring system, is going to be this light green here. Now that's a 2023 rung bird, and I know it's a 2023 rung bird, so I know that is definitely going to be over a year old. So I'm happy that I could pair that one up. So the next thing, once I know that, I've made a note. I make a note of the 2 ring numbers, and the first thing I want to do is before I do anything else, is I want to double check that the 2 birds aren't too closely related, and I can do that over here on my breeding record section, and I merely go back into breeding pairs, and at the top of here there's a trial breeding pair button. I don't know if you can see it, it's over here, hopefully you can see my mouse, and that gives me this little window here where I can test their compatibility in terms of making sure they're not too close. So I click on here, I find the first bird, which was 2502. I notice this now is only giving me the cock birds, and it will only give me the birds that it knows are alive. So there's the cock bird done, and now I can click on here. Now it will give me the hens, and the hen was 2333. That light green hen there. And now I can click here, which says this button here, calculate relationship percentage. And then you can see up here, it says that they are 14.65% is their inbreeding coefficient. So that's how closely related they are. And that's fine to me. That's, you know, if it goes over 25, I'd have to have a serious think about it. If it's, you know, once it gets up into the close to the 50s, then they are too closely related. So 50% would be, you know, would be about the maximum you'd ever think about, I would ever think about going to. I can then, the other thing I can look at here is if this is quite high, I can just check by clicking on this here where it says trial pedigree. If I click on that, it brings up another window here, which tells me, going back 3 generations, where they are related. And now I'm looking for this here, because this just tells me that there's a common ancestor here with this bird. And you can probably see from this that the relationship is between this hen here, so the mother of the light green is also the great grandmother of the cockbird, and that's where the percentage is being pushed up. So that's why the percentage is reasonably high. Right, I'll just close that down, but well, I say high, but it's not that high. It's not so high that I'm going to be particularly worried. So I know these 2 birds are could be compatible. So I can now go to my next phase, which I'll go back to the bird assessment form here. And what I'm looking for here is to make sure I'm not doubling up on faults. So, I mean, at this end of the spectrum, the scale, when I'm talking about my best birds, and we're talking about this bird here, you know, there's no massive faults there at all. I'll be looking for, if it was a 3 or a 2, I would be worried, but there's no massive faults here. It's scoring quite high and everything. I score out of 5, by the way. Right, the hen then, and it's this hen here. I'm looking here, right, so I know that this hen lacks a bit of spot here. It's a 3 on the spot, so that's where it does lack a little bit. So if I go back to the cockbird scored a 4 on the spot, so I'm hoping this cockbird will improve, or that the hen won't pull this cockbird down. Now if I was trying to pair it to, say, this cinnamon here, this bird here, you know, we got 2 3s. That's clearly, I would not consider that compatible pairing. Hope that makes sense. A 4 and a 3, I would be happy to go and have a look at that. So that would be that there, the 4 and the 3. So I'm happy that there's nothing here on paper as to why I can't pair these up. So what I will then do is I'm going to go back to my hens and look for a second hen here that I can double check on, if that makes sense. So if when I get this paired in the cage, because I'm going to do a visual comparison after this, if when I get it in the cage and do a visual comparison, I want to be ready in case it's not visually compatible. So I'm going to click here, this next one down. This 2505 may be old enough. Let's have a quick look. It's unlikely, given that the 2502, is it 02? Yeah, the cockbird's 2502 and is only 10 months old. So this one's younger. So that isn't going to be 10 months old. So we'll need to come down here to 2304. Come back to here. And go to the trial breeding pair. We'll do the same cockbird, which we know is a 2502 here, and the hen was 2304. I always forget there's a little bit down the bottom here. And let's do the calculate percentage. So it's lower, so they're even less inbreeding in here. That's quite low, actually. That's, you know, I definitely wouldn't worry about that. And we'll just quickly click on the trial pedigree and see if we can see where that's coming from. There's no of those 3 dots to show that there's no common within the 3. If I go back a little bit, I suspect if I go back to, say, 4, you can see here, this bird here and this bird here is a common ancestor of the 2 that I'm trying to pair up, which is probably where that is almost certainly where that inbreeding coefficient is coming, but it's quite a long way back. So I'd be happy with that. So that would be the what I'd look at there. I now just double check here. So this bird here, so it has a bit of a problem with its mask and a bit of a problem with spots. So it's no less compatible than with the mask. Let's just double check this cockbird. We know about mask is a 4, so we're doing a 4 to a 3, which you know, we should, hopefully that's not going to be too bad. They're both quite reasonable scores, so I'd be happy with these to try either of these, to have a look at either of these 2 hens with that cockbird. That I'd be happy to pair either of those 2 birds up to that cockbird. So just to reiterate what I've said so far, I use the matrix that I've got here, the matrix that where I scored them. I score them based on their overall score, not on their weighted age score. I tried to pair best to best, and with that, I will then pick the best hen that is old enough to go with those birds, and I tried to get 2 that I can pick from. Now ideally I will choose the one that came top, but if when I get her in the cage they just look like, you know, I see something there that isn't, and we'll come on to that very shortly. I see something there that clearly isn't going to make them compatible, then I'll have a quick look at the second bird, the second of the 2 hens. If I'm happy with that the first hen is fine, or is still the better of the 2 birds when I look at them side by side with this cockbird, then that will then become the first pair. Bearing in mind, I've already checked about compatibility using my breeding record cards in terms of making sure that they're not too closely related. I do hope that makes sense. Next thing I need to do then is to go back into the shed, pull those birds out and do a initial visual comparison on those birds. We are back in the shed again, and before I show you how I go about that final little bit, the bit where we actually do that visual comparison, those final checks that I'm happy with, that those 2 birds are suitable, and that we, you know, and given that slight choice and which one might come out on top. We'll do that in just a second. Before I do that, as always, a big thank you to all those of you who watch the videos. Don't forget, if you enjoy them, please do give them a massive thumbs up. And if you're not yet a subscriber, please do subscribe to the channel. And if you want early notifications on when I release another video, then do, of course, hit the bell icon. Thanks to all those of you who commented on the last video and gave me your suggestions of what you put in the bottom of the cages. I mentioned that, you know, the problem with them spilling out and all that sort of thing. So thank you for those of you who mentioned what you put in there, and I will certainly have a think about that and maybe try a couple of them to see if any of them work for me. So that's the feedback on the last video. Sorry about that, I was just checking what my notes said there. A bit rubbish, very unprofessional of me. Right, so that was the feedback on the last video. Like I say, thank you very much for that and for the number of people who watched it. Right, I'll get the 3 birds out of the flight now, and we'll take a look at them in a show cage and do a little bit of a comparison with each of them and come up with that final decision on what my pair 1 would be. And then of course I've then got the process to doing that for the next 6 pairs if we get that many. Right, let's grab them out of the flight then. Well, I've managed to catch up all of the birds that I need to do this initial assessment, so I've got the last of them out of the main flight. Having a look at, you know, my quick eye of them, I think I know my thoughts on them, but we will go through the whole process now of doing the visual check. Like I say, I've finished my pairing up on paper, identified the birds that I want to look at in terms of this first cock bird, and then and I've got 2 hens out to compare them, and I'll now do that visual comparison. Right, let's have a look at that. So here we are then, looking at the pair. So we've got obviously the cock bird on the left, and you all know this bird, I'm sure, and we have the hen that came out highest in terms of if I look at the one that's going to be old enough to breed. There were some hens that were better than this, but they're currently too young to breed. So the cock bird then is the grey-green cinnamon. And I'll just pan over to him so you can get a look at him. I don't think we're particularly going to worry too much about whether or not he is okay to go into the breeding cage. The important thing is whether this hen is going to be suitable for him, and there's no obvious reason why I shouldn't pair him to this hen here. When I'm looking at them, my only concern, I think, would be that the hen leans quite a long way over the perch rather than standing upright, and so does the cockbird a little bit. So I'll just see if I can get the hen to move across without her becoming too distressed. So you can still see she does still lean over the perch a little bit. The cockbird's not quite as bad. I think he looks more like he's leaning over the perch. I'll just pan back over to him so you can see what I mean. I think he looks like he's leaning over the perch more just because of the way the style of his back. He actually looks quite upright at the moment, so I wouldn't be, it's not a reason I wouldn't pair these two together. I think the masks complement each other. He's got a bit more depth to the mask. She's got quite nice width to the mask. She's quite a big, broad bird as well. She doesn't have the same width between the eyes as he's got, but then again, it's a hen, and I think I've said it when I was doing the when I was looking at them overall, that the hens tend to be my hens tend to be a bit narrower across the head, but she does have a bit of blow about her still, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. I can see no obvious reason why I wouldn't put this hen with this cockbird. What I'm going to do now is just pop up the other hen that came out. I've already seen this hen, just so you know, and I wouldn't say that I would be overly happy with putting him to her, but I'll just show you her anyway. So I'll pan back across so you can see the hen. So this is the hen. It's a cinnamon sky blue opaline, and as you can see, it's got really bad wing carriage most of the time. She's not quite so bad there, but instantly she begins to drop her wings again. This is the bird that actually, you know, you might not, when you look at her now, think it, but she actually won a CC for me. But she does have this horrible habit. If it wasn't for that, I think I would probably prefer this hen. She's got a lot more about the top end, and I am still, now I've got her in the cage and looking at her, I am still umming and ahhing. My only other concern about this particular hen is I'm not convinced she breeds very well, but she has a lot of blow over the top of the head, doesn't she? And do I risk her with this cockbird? I'll pan back across so you can get them both. The cockbird, who had been quite settled, is now becoming a little bit unsettled. I know there have been some comments about pairing him to something that's much more steady on the perch than he is. She's much more steady on the perch than he is, and so is the other hen though. The more I look at this, the more I sort of think I might, if this hen does go down this time and breed for me, and breed a few chicks for me, or for the second of the cockbirds that I'm going to put out, or for partner, her first partner. She will go in the breeding cage early. If she does breed, I might give him a go with her, just because of that blow that she's got across the top of the head. She is quite a steady bird in the cage. Him less so. Struggle to get him back up on the perch now, won't I? I'll pan back across to the hen so you can have a look at her while I'm doing this. I'll put the two hens up together so you can see. Now, I think if we were just talking about top end, the cinnamon gets it, doesn't it? But overall, I think the light green is a more stylish bird for him. Let me know your thoughts. I could change my mind over the time as I start to run through the other birds, but my current feeling is that I'm going to go with the light green, which was the better on paper, just because of the wing carriage problem that this hen has. She's a much bigger bird than the light green. Thoughts then? Thoughts? But my initial feeling is that we're going to go for the light green. What I'll do is I'll pop them both into the same cage, and you can have a look at the light green with her chosen partner. And there we are, both of them up on the perch together. You can see them both together now. He is quite clearly a much better bird than her, isn't he? But then again, I did say he's my best bird, so look at him blowing away there. So as I say, give me your thoughts on whether you would have paired these two together. I know you haven't seen all the other hens, but you have, you know, in terms of my top hens, she's the highest that is ready to breed, as I think I said earlier. Okay, so that is that's how I pair up. So there we are, that's how I pair birds up on paper and then do that visual check at the end. What I've now got to do is to do that for all the other pairs. Now, when I'm doing that for all the other pairs, and we will have a look at all the first 6 or so pairs, hopefully it'll be 6 if I can find 6 that are ready to go. Sorry, there was one, the birds in the main flight were messing around, and one of them managed to get upside down on the little swing in there. Anyway, like I say, so hopefully I will get all 6, providing I've got enough hens that are old enough to breed. I think that's going to be the only hold back or anything that might stop me from putting 6 pairs down straight away. But what I will do is, once I've identified all of the first pairs I want to go down, I'll have one final look at them with all of them and just see whether I want to move any around at the last minute. So it's a constant evolving process for me, but it is how I do it, and it works for me. The idea of pairing best to best, I know not everybody would agree with that, and that's fine. Whatever you do, you know, I try to say it, you know, it's your shed, you do what you like. This is my shed, I do it the way I find easiest for me. I listen to other people and I do adapt my processes as other people might ask me to, but generally speaking, you know, if it's working, I won't change it too much. So so that's the way I do it. I pair up on paper, try and find them, do the visual check. This cockbird is much more settled now in here, maybe because there's another bird in there, I'm not sure, but he is much more settled. You know, and I do that visual check, and then what I will then do is, once I've done that with all of the first pairs, I'll make that final sort of assessment process. Right, so that brings us to the end. At the beginning of this episode, I did say that I did ask the question about which was the country other than the UK that comes second to the UK where we get the most views from, the most number of viewers from. For those of you that did manage to guess, I'll give you the answer. Or I had a guess, I'll give you the answer now. It's actually New Zealand. And that did surprise me that it was, New Zealand, quite a long, long way away anyway. So there we go. Thank you for all those of you who watch in New Zealand. Now, I'm not sure whether that's, 2 or 3 people bumping up the total watching lots of videos, or whether it represents a large number. I'd have to go back into the data and have a look at that. Anyway, that's the question that it asked me. Maybe in the next episode I will do the same and do a whatever question it asks me, I'll pose that question to you as we did here. Anyway, just a bit of fun. Right, as I say, that brings us to the end of another episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment, and if you're feeling really generous, then do of course buy me a coffee. But most importantly, as always, do stay safe, enjoy your birds.